not. We've got James. The if you've ever watched Blackadder, the baldrick of this show, he's here. Oh, James! Now I'm hearing myself twice. But we're live this morning, as we will be every Friday, and we haven't let you down so far, so we're not about to start now. The reason for the change is that the real network is no more. We decided to can that project, and it's been a long and exciting journey through all of the different stages of this show, and this is no exception. I will admit the hardest part of doing anything like this is not looking at financial figures, trying to figure out whether you have sufficient audience or sufficient sponsors or any of that stuff. The real question is, do you have the right people? And we always did. And the only sad thing to me is that there are a bunch of people who we no longer can keep on staff, and we've decided to just trim things right down to their bare essentials. So no more real network, but the Gareth Cliff show continues in all its glory, and we're going to be doing this show live. I've also got something exciting coming up, which will be launching in the second week of April, and I'll tell you about that a little later in the show today. We have Hanan on in a short while. He will fill us in on what I think is going to be a very controversial topic. Are men more extreme than women? And there is data to prove that may or may not be the case. You'll have to hang around to find out whether it's true or not. We're also going to speak to a guy about the future. A guy, some dude, his name is Jonathan Warncke. He is actually, he's some important representative in the world of podcasting, and we need to check in with him because he knows what's going on with Parliament and with government and what they're trying to do. I always get very nervous when governments start talking about regulation. And these guys are talking about the regulation of podcasting and of digital media, which, to be perfectly honest, scares the hell out of me. Because so far, there was even a parliamentary document that was published online this week. I think it was on Instagram or on X, where someone had highlighted podcasting and digital media is one of the fastest growing and most exciting parts of the South African media landscape. It's also unregulated. And I thought, I wonder if those things could be related. I wonder if things grow and they do well when government has less to do with them. And the answer, of course, is yes, they do. So we'll find out all about that in a short while. The comment section is open and live. I see everybody's crazy in here already. Mora Mensa says, Lou, new theme looks nice. Yeah, we're going to be changing all of that up. And as I said, some other exciting things, which I'll announce to you a little bit later on. Got sound now. Was there no sound? James? Oh, that's brilliant. James had muted my microphone. So how long was I talking into the void?
About 15 seconds.
Jesus, James. All right. Don't worry. Okay, so we got lots of that to talk about in a short while. We'll get into some of those things. There's plenty of news as well. And I don't know. James seems to have thought that this is an especially busy news week, but I don't think it has been. Every week feels like it's an extremely busy news week this week. I want to start, though, with a story that, look, I don't know if it's true because you don't know if anything's true anymore. You go on the internet, you see people talking about a certain thing, it's trending, which is always usually a bad sign because if something's trending, it usually means it's popular but fake. And AI is creating so much nonsense and slop and brain rot at the moment that it's very hard for everybody to figure out whether or not what they're actually consuming is valuable. This story, I hope, is true. I really do. The story is almost like that movie, The Incredible Journey, or the book, The Incredible Journey, the movie Homeward Bound. This was published this week, and it was mostly on social media. It's very hard to find attribution or references online that can tell you if it's a hoax or not. But the story was that there were 7 dogs that were kidnapped. Now, I don't know if these dogs were kidnapped by people who wanted to eat them, because there are people who will do that. It was in the UK somewhere, right? And about 17 kilometers outside of London, these dogs escaped from the truck that they were in. And there was an Alsatian, a Labrador, there were 2 little Pekingese dogs, there was a Corgi, and these 7 dogs somehow got out of the truck that had abducted them from their various owners in London. And they managed to make an escape. Have you got that video? Just show everybody the video, because this is wild. The Corgi apparently led the way, and all of these people were all of these dogs, rather. I mean, I talk about dogs like people. They were found 17 kilometers. They were on their way home from the place they'd escaped. They had walked along roads. They'd gone through bushes, hedges, down garden paths. They'd found their way. The corgi led the other dogs, and they managed to make it back to close enough to all of their owners for someone to find them, report them, and then the police apparently reunited all of these dogs with their owners. Now, I think this is the most beautiful story in the whole world, and I really hope it's true. You know, there's this Billy Connolly joke he does about a dwarf, and he goes, "Oh God, I hope it's true." And I really hope that's the case with these dogs too, because if this is, then it is the only great story to happen on the internet for, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. There's also less good news. I see that the president has been very, very busy this week. Well, for him, very busy, which means he hasn't been sitting at home doing nothing. Here's a video of Cyril. He was talking about, very sad for him, and he's pretending he's not upset. You could see from the video he's really putting on a good show. His eyes go all big, and he's trying very hard to not let people on that he's kind of pissed off that he wasn't invited to the G7. Now, before you watch this, you have to remember that the G7 is an even more exclusive club than the G20, and we were the hosts of the G20 last year. Remember that remember those lovely days when they fixed up Joburg for just a short while, and the roads were being repaired, and the lights all worked, and there were special lanes, and there was advertising for the G20 all over. They put ugly, hideous orange pots at various intersections and off ramps from the highway. They put up a few new signs in the worst parts of Gauteng to show people where the airport was, at the opposite end of Gauteng. Like if you were in Krugersdorp, for example, there would have been a sign that said OR Tambo that way. Krugersdorp? If you are going to follow signs from Krugersdorp to OR Tambo, you're going to get lost. Anyway, the G20 was a big deal, as you may remember. Everyone was told this is the most important event South Africa's hosted since the World Cup. And there was no doubt, if anyone was asking questions, every single person in government, there were whole departments turned into like G20 PR machines. If there was any doubt that this government wasn't massively excited by and hugely proud of the fact that they had the G20 here, then you just had to turn on your TV and watch any of the old news channels or get on the internet and see the press releases they were putting out, the advertising they were placing everywhere. It was very abundantly clear to everybody that the G20 was very important to Cyril. So now, I don't know how seriously to take him when he says he's not upset that he wasn't invited to the G7. Watch this.
My information is that there's been no pressure from any country, the United States or any other country. And the invitation to the G7 does not mean you are being snubbed if you are not invited or you are being ignored. And there are so many countries around the world that don't get invited to the G7. And we are not a member, and remember, South Africa is not a member. And when we do go, we are invited and we take a message there. We haven't attended every G7. So if we don't go to this one, it should never be a surprise to anyone.
I don't believe him. I don't know if you do, but that doesn't sound to me like it's a thing. Sorry, Cyril. And also, when he does that big eye thing, you know, that's like deer in the headlights territory. I can tell that that's what's going on there. It's not just that, though. He did deploy a whole bunch of troops to the Cape Flats. So in case you thought that the president was just busy saying, they didn't invite me to the party, but I really wanted to go, there's also this, which I think is kind of interesting. Again, these stories are being generated by AI on the internet, but I checked this one out and it does line up with some semblance of the truth. So the headline is that there are troops now being deployed in various parts of the Western Cape. Whether or not the Western Cape, I mean, we clearly know that the Western Cape is one of those parts of South Africa where there's a big problem. big problem with knife violence, with gun violence, with all of that stuff. So clearly people are concerned for the right reasons, and the president decided that the best thing to do was to send the army in. He did this, of course, in where was it in Joburg the other day? It wasn't West Dean or Coronationville. It was in, I think, I actually can't remember which neighborhood he put them into, but it was some dangerous neighborhood in South Africa. And clearly he thought this was a good idea. Hey, if it helps the people of Cape Town, people in those areas are usually thrilled when they see the army because they're also sick of being abused by criminals. Crooks, these guys kind of have the run of the place. So 800, I think, is the number. 800 troops that have been deployed into the Cape Flats. Around 800 of these soldiers are being sent there after 83 murders in just 11 days. 83 murders in one, I suppose you could call it a geographical area, because it's not really just one suburb or neighborhood. It's a whole geographical area. And I would say 83 murders is quite a lot. I don't think that anyone in Israel or America in the military there has been lost yet. I may be wrong. There may be some soldiers who were killed at a base when one of the drones attacked. I think it was in Qatar or Kuwait. So maybe 3 or 4 people on the American side. And I think the Israelis have lost a few civilians because of indiscriminate missiles and drone attacks. But I don't think they get even close to 83. And that is just 11 days in the Cape Flats. So if you happen to live in the Cape Flats, what can I tell you? Not a great place, and clearly somewhere that needs to be sorted out. So they'll support the police. This is the soldiers now, with riots, with patrols, with raids, with searches, and they have no arrest powers. So the police still have to do that. And authorities are struggling to contain escalating gang violence. So we already know that on the list of dangerous places in South Africa, Joburg is not the leader. Apparently Cape Town is the place you need to worry about. Speaking of Cape Town, though, I did think it was really, really cool to see some people having a good time. There's a girl, I think she's Zimbabwean, called Miracle Tadiwa. And there was this photograph she put up of her and her soulmate in Cape Town. Just a lovely, heartwarming photo. We started the show with the news story of the dogs that made their way back home in their incredible journey. But here's Miracle Tadiwa reminding us that Cape Town is not just a gang-riddled, violent shithole. Actually, it's a place where you take the person you really love. Have you got that picture of Miracle and her boyfriend? Because I think this is so sweet. They're such attractive, lovely people. And I want you to share in their joy with me this morning. He's not what you expect. When you see what he looks like, it may even give you a fright so early in the morning. So we'll have to check that out and make absolutely sure that that they're okay. Looking at him, we're going to need to check on him pretty much every week. Very, very long neck. Almost looks like a Simpsons character. Did you get that picture I sent you? I'll try and find it on here because it's probably easier. This is what Miracle and her boyfriend. Can I hold it up to the camera? Yeah. Okay, let me just show you that. She's a lucky girl. What can I tell you? He is absolutely not the guy you're expecting to see. That's him. You see that? Let me move it back a little bit. There. Got it? How's that? But love. What more could you want? A little bit of love. And we do like a little love on a Friday morning. In America, they have a system where you get called up for jury duty. So let's say, for example, you were in the Western Cape and we were under the American judicial system and legal system, and you were witness to one of those 81 murders that happened in the Western Cape. You would probably be asked to partake in the court case as a witness. But let's say you were someone who just lived in the neighborhood, or even in Cape Town more generally. Part of your duty would be, if you lived in America, that they can call you up at random and they can say to you, I need you to come and sit in court as judge and jury. So that there will be a judge. They'll take care of all the legal technicalities, make sure that the law is followed, explain things to the jury where necessary. And eventually pass judgment, but the jury will decide if someone's guilty or innocent. And the cool thing about that, in the opinion of people who like juries, there's a big controversy going on at the moment in the UK because they're also having a discussion about whether they'll abandon the jury system completely. But in America, it's very much part of their system. And it can happen to anybody. It can happen to famous people. It can happen to people who have real jobs and shit to do. You get called up for jury duty, you've got to explain to the court why you cannot do jury duty. And usually the court will say, your excuse is rubbish. You say, I've got to run my multi-million-dollar company. They'll say, sorry, can't help you. You actually have to be here, and you have to spend as long as the trial takes. You may remember famous cases like the OJ trial, where they have, I think it was 12 jurors in that case, and these people are all subsequent to that very, very ancient story. They've all become famous. Some of them have already died. They're so old, because this did happen in the 90s. And being on a jury is something that most Americans don't want. It's going to take up time. They're going to have to go to court every day. They're going to have to hear all this stuff. They could become infamous or famous because suddenly they're all over TV. The thing that you really don't want is if you have a serious job and it's going to take up time to end up sitting in court in America. And it does happen to famous people. Here's an actor called James Marsden. What I like about this clip is that James Marsden, I suppose if you weren't a fan of his and you thought he was like every other actor in Hollywood, you'd say, oh, this is an arrogant guy, because he's saying, people know me. And I think that could prejudice the case. So he tries to explain to the judge, I don't think you want me on this jury. The judge is having none of it. And the judge then asks one of the other people who is likely to end up on jury duty, do you know who this guy is? It's kind of funny. I like the way that James Marsden reacts to this. I don't think he's being an egotistical nutcase or that he's particularly full of himself. But take a look and you decide.
I mean, my expectation now is that there's going to be something like the revenge of the humanities. What the world is going to need are well-educated generalists with good taste, right? Good aesthetic taste, people who have read good books and gone to good museums and had good arguments and can make good arguments and can create companies using, robots that have learned to code that produce things that we actually want that benefit our culture. We're going to want a beautiful culture. We're going to want human curation.
James, that's not James Marsden. I mean, just because his name is the same as yours doesn't mean that that's him. That's Sam Harris. What Sam Harris was talking about is also interesting, but that was not what I was building up to. So let's see if we can find the James Marsden thing. I'll get back to Sam Harris too in a little while. There's plenty of local news. I don't know if you saw that there was a lion that walked into a game lodge in Botswana and had everybody freaking out. There was only one guy in the lodge. He was like, he'd probably been on a game drive that afternoon, maybe had a couple of drinks. He was sitting there, and the night vision camera picks up this lion that walks in behind him. And he's kind of like dozing on the sofa or whatever. But the lion comes to probably about 2-3 meters away from him. And for some reason, he looks back and he sees this thing. And I don't know about you, but if I ended up in a game lodge at night with all the lights off and I heard a lion, which is quite a silent animal, pads under their feet and all the rest, they don't make a huge amount of noise. And I turned around and I saw a male lion with a mane and everything else, this big, fully grown adult lion. I think there would be poo running down the inside of my leg. I don't know how. This guy must... All right, so funny comment here. I love this from Signet saying James is still fucking around. Bitcoin Butt saying Dr. Hanan needs to discuss this behavior. Absolutely. And Vyasan saying James can't find James. Yeah, Comment section's on to you. Lol, for fuck's sake, James, says Lou. I feel trauma coming over me, help. Is that because of James or because of that lion video? So I think it's at a lodge in Botswana. That's what I found when I tried to look into the origin of this clip. And I don't know how recent it is. But, it only takes one person to be eaten for it to be too much. And then, of course, it's the lion's fault, and people will take out the lion. We've always been very pro in animal attacks videos on this show. We've always been very much on the side of the animals, and you can tell why. Definitely, those are our friends. Okay, so let's get back to the James Marsden clip, because here he is trying to persuade the judge that he doesn't want to do jury duty. I'm trying to think in South Africa what people might come up with as excuses, because we're very good. We think on our feet. You can imagine, just from the way our politicians lie, how quickly a South African would be able to come up with ideas of why they shouldn't be on jury duty. Oh, no, I've got a bachelorette party. Kind of like Gen Z excuses for not being at work. That's kind of what it would be. You'd have that level of bullshit coming from people. So we'll have to see what they would say in South Africa if we ever get it. I don't think jury duty in this country would be a good idea, mostly because we already know we have an education problem. We have a numeracy and literacy problem, right? So if the average South African votes for someone like, say, Fikile Mbalula, not that we've ever voted for him in anything, but let's just say he was the example, right? Fikile Mbalula we'll talk about just now because there's been news. AfriForum brought some dossier against him, and they're going to prosecute him on issues of crimen injuria, which is basically defamation. That's more or less what it is. But if Fikile Mbalula is the kind of guy people would vote for, can you imagine what a jury would do when applying facts to a case in a matter of law? I think rather even the worst judges, and we do have a couple of terrible judges in this country, but by and large, I don't know if you'll agree with me. I think most South Africans would. Whenever a famous court case goes on, I mean, we've all been watching the Madlanga Commission lately, and those three judges, all three seem to know exactly what they're doing. They seem to be very well versed in the law. They seem to be very smart people. I'd rather have them making decisions like this. If South African juries were ever instituted, I think we'd have a major problem. Certainly in terms of credibility, knowledge, expertise, even just paying attention for long enough. I mean, they could find someone who's on tick and make them part of the jury. That would not be a good thing. Here's James Marsden trying to wiggle his way out. You'll recognize him from... They go through some of the movies, by the way, and the judge is like, I haven't heard of these movies.
I feel like there's a chance that I might be an unwelcome distraction.
Why is that, sir?
I'm a recognizable public figure.
Respectfully, I don't recognize you. I'm sorry. Who are you?
That's okay. A lot of people do.
Stand up. Do you know who this fella is?
I do, yeah. It took me a little bit to notice him yesterday, but I recognize him, yes.
What has he done?
He's done X-Men, Sonic, he's in Hairspray, 27 Dresses, Death at a Funeral.
Have you seen all those films?
No.
Okay. Do you think that him sitting would be a distraction?
Not for me, no.
With all due respect, I don't think it'd be a distraction either. So why don't you both sit down?
And you can see the guy is just like, oh, shit. I'm going to lose this. I'm going to have to do jury duty. It must be horrible. Imagine he's got some big movie project on that's going to pay him like $60 million. Some superhero movie. He's done a couple of those before. By the way, I didn't recognize any of those movie names either. I don't think I've seen any of them. So probably a good thing I wasn't the judge because he would end up with the same outcome. So Bitcoin Bud is telling us we need someone to run our socials properly. TRN was great and could have gone far with proper exposure, especially on X. Glad Mapello isn't seeing this well. He's going to have things to say. And then Zelna says, where is Ben? We need to talk Live Golf. Ben has plenty to say about Live Golf. We'll have him back on the show next week. But he is celebrating his brother's 50th birthday, so he's in the Cape this weekend and is out of signal, so he actually can't join us on the show this morning. So we will bring James back. Trust me, he's not. We're not throwing him off the reserve. And there will be plenty of the other regulars. But excitingly, we're going to have a different format for the show too. We're playing around with the idea, and I know when I say this, people are going to go crazy in the comment section. But things evolve, right? So we're looking at options of maybe doing the show from 7 rather than from 6. Something, again, that people were suggesting a while ago, and then a lot of people lost their shit. So tell us what you think. And as you know, you can always email me. I'll put up James's email address too, because we're going to, not your old email address. That one we're going to have to change. But we'll put that up so you can abuse him. But it'll all be in the description of the episode. And you can let us know what you think we should do. Because I want to change this up, make it a lot more punchy, get guests that absolutely are enthralling and interesting and make people think, laugh, smile, maybe even cry. You know, it's never a bad thing to have guests that can make you cry occasionally, just to remind you that you're human. Live golf and white-on-white crime. That is hilarious. I'm not going to play the video because everyone has seen it a million times. But there are a bunch of butts who got into a fight. The only embarrassing thing about Live Golf, apparently, and I'll check with Ben whether this is true or not. I don't see why it wouldn't be. Apparently, Live Golf have signed for the next 7 years, which is very good news for South Africa. It was a massive event. They reckon over 100,000 people attended during the course of the 4 days that it was on. I went on the Thursday, the first day, and I must tell you, it was first class. They had all the facilities you could wish for in an international sporting event. It was, Ben said, better than just about every golf thing he's been to, maybe just short of the Ryder Cup. People walking around, golfers having lots of fun. I bumped into Gayton McKenzie while I was there. He was very, very excited, and he did quite a lot to bring it here. So well done, Gayton. I know people are a little bit pissed off with him half the time and thrilled with him the rest of the time. But Gayton McKenzie did his bit, so I'm thrilled that he's also getting a little shine from this. Hey, we need events like that in South Africa. People need something to do. People need something to get excited about. And if we can get it for 7 years in a row, that is investment. Also, Stain City, got to tell you, looking good. Stain City is green and beautiful. And even though it's right near that shit pipe that goes past Dainfern, don't let that put you off. Most people thought it was a Roman aqueduct. I kid you not. Foreign visitors. They thought, oh, that doesn't seem to me to be a shit pipe that's taking all the sewage from the northern suburbs of Johannesburg to a treatment facility. No. It's a Roman aqueduct. It's very beautiful. Let them believe that. It's a good idea. Carl says apparently the big names didn't want to come because they said that nobody would come and watch it, and it ended up being the second most attended globally. Apparently the only one that got more numbers was Adelaide in Australia. So that is true, Carl. And hey, we can put on a good show in South Africa. We've proven this before. We did a World Cup. It was probably one of the most fun World Cups, not just because we were here and I went to a couple of games, but it had a vibe, it had an energy, it had an excitement. I don't think you could say that for Qatar, God bless them, when they hosted it the last time. And maybe America will do a good job this time around. I have no doubt they could put on a good show, but remember, it's America and Canada and Mexico. So if you were hoping to come here for sport this morning with Ben, that's about all the sport I'm going to be able to get to. Do we need to learn how to box if we want to go to live? The point of that, and the comment that launched this conversation, is that a bunch of butts got together and they decided to have a fight on the golf course. Well, not on the golf course, but in the crowd area. And it was a really embarrassing fight, not because it was violent and because this is the kind of thing that you could see every night that you go out in places like Four Ways. James, for example, is from Four Ways. He knows it well. You have to walk around like this just in case shit goes down. You do. You have to know which car is the getaway car. This is how people have to operate in Four Ways, especially in like the Palm Slope Center where LSB is, That's where people go, and you need to know to avoid these places. Girls get involved in the fights too, and you could hear some of the chicks in the background here shouting, "Go, Dylan! Go, Carl! Get him!" It was actually very, very exciting. Not much in the way of fighting, but certainly messy enough to pass for one of those late night bar brawls that you sometimes see in dodgy northern suburbs parts of Johannesburg. Hey, we got to take what we can get. It was part of the entertainment. For all we know, it helped to sell the idea to live. We don't know. They might be into that stuff, right? Howie Hughes has some very useful, you see, this is the kind of stuff I come to the comment section for. Thank you, Howie. He says, 7 a.m. is better, obviously for you then, Howie, which is what I'm asking. Is the Cliff Central app ever going to work again? No. That hasn't worked, Howie, for 3 years. So I don't think that's going to be the way to do things going forward. Patrick wants to know if Clippies was involved in the fight at Live Golf. There's a 98% chance that Clippies was involved. I have to tell you that the hospitality that I was in on Thursday, and I think it was some kind of VIP, whatever it was, the food was better than any wedding I've been to, with maybe one or two exceptions. Restaurant quality, 5-star, very, very impressive. Furniture all over the place, beautiful decor, really impressive. A lot of it's custom built. So these guys from Live clearly know what they were doing and were spending all of that Saudi oil money, which is great, according to me. The Indian guy was the funniest. I think he was fighting for both sides. That's, again, back to the Butt fight. There was an Indian dude. It was mostly the Watts, but there was an Indian dude who was also involved, and he probably was fighting for both sides. A lot of South African Indians do. For example, you'll see a lot of South African Indians who used to vote ANC now voting DA. Hey, Helen, we've been your friends the whole time, man. And then, like 2 or 3 years ago, hey, Cyril, we're your friends, bro. So if you want to know which way the wind blows, just follow a lot of those oaks who talk like that about politics. I, for one, need the 6 o'clock on the way to work, says Jean. Thank you. We will put this, you know what we'll do? We'll put it into one of those big spinning balls with tickets, and then we'll pull like a tombola. we'll put it all in a tombola, and then we'll draw the winning number, and we'll see what we can do about the start time. As I said, this is all open to various kinds of influence. If you want to email us, we'll put all the details in the description. You can let us know what you think, or just drop it in the comment section now. Vyasan says, I called Gayton Grayton, but he's just another politician. James, if you were to wear a skimpy dress if we do the lotto thing, I think people would vomit in their mouths. We would lose tremendous numbers of audience. It would just be very, very bad. They slipped on the Clippies, says Wade. Wade, you're being too forgiving. I live in the US and the daylight savings is always throwing me off. I will work with any time. Well, thank you. Promise. How very kind of you to be so accommodating of our needs. We don't have a preference, by the way. It's probably just as well to keep it at 6, but we are toying with the idea. And we can do whatever we want with this show, right? Between me and you being the person who watches or listens, we can figure it out. We'll decide. Bitcoin But's asking a very racist but very South African question. Vyasan, what curry do you recommend for the best punch? See, again, just because Vyasan is Indian, curry. This is the kind of thing that starts a fight in the northern suburbs, by the way. Hey, what kind of, you must a charu, eh? So, what curry is your favorite curry? Hey, man, just because I'm Indian doesn't mean I'm only eating curry. Who are you calling curry? Here's my bras. Hey, you got your bras, I got my bras. Next thing you know, you got to fight. This is not helpful, guys, and I don't need the comment section to become like Live Golf. Richard says, we are having great success showing our solar panel fire safety products at Solar and Storage Expo at Gallagher. That's excellent. You see, Richard, if we didn't know about that, how would we know to go and take a look at the fire panel safety products? Solar fire panel safety product. Solar panel fire. Good God. Okay. Someone called James illiterate. Carl DeSantis in the comments. What's the point of emailing him? But I've just displayed that I am illiterate too. Bitcoin Bit says, I went to Governor's on Wednesday and I felt like murring people afterwards. Is that because curry makes you violent? Maybe the effect of curry on Butts is that it makes them angry. I don't know. All right, so I want you to see this too. There's a list of countries with private jets. This is fascinating. We'll see where South Africa comes up on the list. But in case you thought we were one of those sad countries that didn't make it, we're not exactly in the top 10, but we're not doing too badly, and I'll explain why. South Africa, in terms of the total number of jets that we have, we come in at 160 private jets that are registered in South Africa. Now, you may think that's few or may think that's many, but let's compare us to some of the countries that we are near, or that we have economic parity with. Okay, so Argentina has 142, so they're underneath us on the scale. Obviously, a country like America is right at the top with 15,347 private jets. Brazil comes second, and they're in with 1103, so 1,103. Mexico comes next, then Canada, then Germany, then the Isle of Man. Now, I find that fascinating. Obviously, it's a tax haven, and the Isle of Man, you need a private jet to get to and from the Isle of Man. Must be a lot of rich people who park their jet at the Isle of Man airport. And it must be an enormous airport for a shitty little place like that. The only person I know in the Isle of Man is Rich Mulholland. So the next time we talk to him, we'll have to find out if that's true. Then Austria, then the rest of the UK with a paltry 241. We're not that far behind. China has 203. Okay, so for the world's second biggest economy, and a place where there are rich people, but they are few and far between, and if the government decides they don't like you and you're rich, they may just get rid of you. But 203 for China. Then Venezuela. Obviously, these numbers have dwindled since this survey was conducted, probably in 2023-24. Venezuela at that point, 168 private jets, and South Africa, 160. Not bad. I mean, we could be proud of ourselves. I wonder how many of those belong to tenderpreneurs and how many of those belong to people who don't even live in South Africa, but they rent them out. Someone rich once said to me, so for anyone who's hankering for a private jet, it's a little life advice. If it flies, floats, or fucks, rent it, don't buy it. That's what rich people say. If it flies, floats, or fucks, rent it, don't buy it. And, you know, when you're talking to billionaires and they tell you something like that, you listen. I wonder whatever happened to Sia. Well, Ryan, we were going to have Sia on the show this morning, actually, because Sia was in Parliament yesterday. Wednesday. Wednesday, Sia was in Parliament. He was representing, I think, Podcast Party, and he was there to talk about the change in the media landscape and the regulation that government seeks to impose on the podcasting business. I'm going to save that for later. We've actually got a video of Sia I can show you, just the opening gamut of what he had to say. But we'll get to that when we get to our guest a little later on, Jonathan, because obviously podcasting is, and maybe I should just go on a mini rant here about podcasting. One of the reasons I'm also changing the show is I feel like there's so much AI slop and podcasts where you've got two people at a table with microphones talking to each other. There's so much of that at the moment. There's a glut of content. I don't want to be doing that anymore. I feel like we need to change it up, and that is part of what we're going to be doing in the next few weeks. So fair warning, things are going to change. We're going to make it a lot more interesting, a lot more dynamic. We will not just be doing interviews with one person about one topic. We're not going to be doing the kinds of podcasts that everybody else is doing on the internet, or the kind that you see now, thanks to AI, being made by non-humans. And let's be fair, there is enormous value in AI. We've discussed this stuff over and over again. The efficiencies that can be brought in, the kind of information that can be derived through AI is way better than the information a human could gather, even with search engines like Google, the way that we used to do it up to AI. So there is value. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I do think if you've been online on any social medium or you've been watching your feed a little more than usual, you'll have noticed that some stuff is starting to turn up that is purely driven by it's made by the algorithm. So you can tell that this was actually, there was no human involved. They've got like an AI. It's a kind you can sometimes pick up whether it's fake or real, but usually you can tell by the dialogue fairly quickly this is not a human. It's then posted on some account that has millions of followers, so you think, okay, well, this must be legit, but the bots are joining up, they are watching the content, they're driving up the numbers, then they're engaging as if they were humans. So you've got bots that made it, you've got bots that are watching it, you've got bots that are engaging in it, and you've got bots that are fighting with each other in the comments. There's no human involved at any point in all of this conversation. And I don't know whether that's going to be very useful to people. This brings us back to Sam Harris, who James mistakenly played as James Marsden earlier on. And he had some interesting things to say. Now, Sam Harris, for those who don't know, is one of the famous atheist four horsemen of the apocalypse. It was him, Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens. And these four were the great public intellectuals of the 1990s, the late 90s. Sam Harris is absolutely a smart guy. There's no doubt in my mind that he's one of the sharpest thinkers in the world. He's written tremendously interesting books that are well researched. He's a philosopher. He's big on meditation. He hates Donald Trump. But you know what? Every now and then, Sam and I completely agree on something, and every now and then we completely disagree on things. Most of the time I agree with him. So take a look at this, because Sam is talking about what, if you have children, they should be studying in the next couple of years with this burgeoning world of AI and all of the bad and good that comes with it. And his answer may interest you. So just pretend you didn't already see 5 seconds of this clip earlier and listen to it in the context of Sam talking about what AI could do positively and negatively going forward.
I mean, my expectation now is that there's going to be something like the revenge of the humanities. What the world is going to need are well-educated generalists with good taste, right? Good aesthetic taste, people who have read good books and gone to good museums and had good arguments and can make good arguments and can create companies using, robots that have learned to code that produce things that we actually want that benefit our culture. We're going to want a beautiful culture. We're going to want human curation of increasingly powerful tools put to good purpose. I would be much more bullish on a degree in philosophy or even English literature, quite frankly, at this moment, than perhaps certain STEM fields. I mean, and I would certainly put computer science in that category.
Yeah.
Now, I largely agree with this. I don't think there's much reason for any of us to find fault with it. I love the idea that the human touch is going to be what separates the good from the great. As AI becomes better at making stuff, and I see a comment here from somebody saying that even in the architectural profession, it's Jody, that AI is taking over there. We're still going to need humans. And I think that will become the magic ingredient in whatever we do, whether it's in architecture, engineering, whether it's in media, whether it's in the applied sciences or philosophy. So I'm not upset or anxious or nervous like a lot of people are. I had a conversation with a friend of mine in London this week. He is a big investor, and he asked me out of the blue, what do I think of AI? And I said to him, I'm mostly an optimist, and I feel most of us are. But there are things about it that are already putting me off. And I think one of the things that's putting me off is the kind of content that AI generates, because it's not human. It's not able to, even with all the data in the world, all of the human behavior it can track, the responses, the stimulation that it can give us as humans by making us angry or making us sad or throwing up nostalgia, which it does, I mean, it's got so good that if I go onto my Instagram or any other social medium now, it pretty much knows what kind of stuff I'm going to watch to the end. The danger of that is that eventually it's going to start manufacturing stuff that is just crap, and it's already happening. I spoke to another person this week who said to me they have had enough. That friend of mine, Greg, who's been on the show, who does Luxury Marble Circus, he used to do Matric Rage, all of that stuff. Greg said to me he is so put off by his social media feed at the moment that it's just not exciting to him. All right, so let's go to the comments quickly. Congo Chris says, welcome to the new show. Give us your honest Mapello opinion. Oh, sorry, that's Bitcoin, but to Congo, Chris. And yes, that's what we're looking for, Congo. This isn't the real Gareth Cliff. It's AI generated. How do I prove that I'm not AI? Apparently the thing to do, this is a video I saw this week. You know how to check if something's AI? Is you ask the deep fake to hold 3 fingers up to its face, and it can't do it. It can't do it because it'll mess up either the deep fake filter it's using, or it doesn't know how to put 3 fingers properly in front of its face. So when I can't do this anymore, then you know I'm fake. And I know the guys were actually working. You know, they sent me a couple of videos to prove it on like a version of me that sounds exactly like me and looks 90% like me. It probably, to be perfectly frank, was way better looking than me. So maybe I should have gone with it. But it just didn't get the movements right. You know when you're not dealing with a real person. Have you ever had a conversation with someone on the phone? There was this amazing clip I saw the other day of this guy who was talking to someone on the phone, and then he said, "Can you turn on your video? Because I don't believe you're real." And then they turned the video, like flashed on briefly, and you could tell that this was not it was not the person who was representing themselves that way. So that clearly is something that's been going on for a while. There was this dude in America this week. Oh my God, what a story. Have we got Hanan, by the way? Okay. So there's this dude in America who he's like an old boomer he just lost his wife, sadly. And he got this message on, I think it was like LinkedIn or something, from somebody who was going to help him with some aspect of investing. He clearly was a retired old man, and he had all this money lying around, and he was asking on LinkedIn for advice, which is something a boomer would do online. And he was particularly interested in like Bitcoin and gold and that kind of thing. And so this person got hold of him. Well, he thought it was a person. It was a scam artist. And many of our alarm bells would go off in this situation. But, you know, some people are more gullible than others. It's partly their fault, but it's not entirely their fault. Anyway, this woman, probably a guy, said, let's rather talk on WhatsApp. They got talking. This person was like, oh, you know, my childhood was really rough. And they started kind of evoking sympathy in each other, telling each other's stories. And eventually this woman who had like a wine estate and had investments in Bitcoin said, oh, I've got this thing that, by the way, has come up where you could put like $100,000 in, and then you will make 50% every month on your investment. Is it dead or is it still working? Oh, shit, James. How are we going to fix that? Okay, well, we're going to carry on. James is going to sort out the cameras. Is Hanan on? Okay, well, let's go to Hanan then. Sort that out. I'll switch over here so that you can just get me on the other camera, and then we'll talk to Hanan. Still figuring this stuff out.
Gareth.
Brought you on. So there we go. Okay, are we on? All right, so Doc, tell me what's happening in your life. Are you seeing some nutcases today?
The day's busy, but mental health is not taking a break for nobody. Nobody's going away on mental health is not taking a break for Easter, that's for sure.
Yeah, holidays for some people are harder than the normal working days. But I do want to talk to you about something. I read this thing about Greater Male Variability Hypothesis this week. I don't want to put people off and chase them away. But this is actually a fascinating area of research. Are men more extreme than women? We even put that into the byline of the show today, because we often talk about gender differences. But is it true that men at the extremes are more likely to make up the numbers than women? Are women generally more normal in the whole, in the mean, in the average, than men? And obviously I'm asking you with respect to like mental illness here, because that's something we need to figure out.
Yeah, so I've done some background research, and the reality is that men and women are not different in terms of extremes, but where the direction of extremity actually goes. So women are more extreme going internally, and men are more extreme externally. That's why when it comes to mental ill health, women suffer more with depression, the internal illness, anxiety with the internal illness, insecurity, guilt, and men suffer more extreme with the externalizing of that. So anger, suicide is way higher in men than women. Men express themselves more so with ADHD. Any of the conditions or disorders that require external manifestation, men struggle more with, whilst women struggle more with the internal direction of that energy.
So is there a biological reason for this? Is it social, or is it a mix of both?
It is a mixture of both. They say genetics load the gun, and socializing, the nurture part, points the gun at the target. In other words, women, biologically, they are pre-programmed, obviously, for socializing, but we get rewarded. Women get rewarded for socializing, being much more emotionally in tune. So when you walk in, at age 6 years old, women are socialized to name more feelings and manage their emotions amongst their friends, whilst men are much more external, playing soccer, resting each other outside in the yard. So men are much more rewarded by being external, while women are much more rewarded, at least in a social sense, by being internal and recognizing not just their feelings, their internal world, but other women's internal world as well.
Yeah, I mean, women just talk about this stuff more than we do, right?
Yeah, they feel much more comfortable. That's their social hierarchy. That's how they get, the badge of honor. Are you able to recognize your own feelings, and are you able to recognize the feelings of the people around you? Men don't focus on that because there's no reward in recognizing when your friend is sad or upset or anxious. But there is plenty of reward in terms of recognizing whether your friend is a better soccer player than you, because we get rewarded socially on the external game as opposed to the internal one.
I'm always amazed by how these gender differences, these psychological and biological differences between people, seem to upset some of kind of more ideological people online, because I don't think it's necessarily better or worse, but there's definitely a difference. Does this mean that men are more predisposed to, for example, end up homeless, or that because we know there's a tenuous link between homelessness and mental illness, right? I mean, there are videos all over the internet of these homeless people. You can tell that a lot of them are suffering from something. It might not be an entire diagnosis, and you certainly can't give that from a video on social media. But it does appear to me that a lot of these people, and a lot of these men especially, are those people on the extremes that we started this conversation with.
So, two things. Number one, there's no better or worse. You want to work with who you are, your nature. So is it better to be introvert or extrovert? Is it better to be more socially inclined or more withdrawn and isolated? Is it better to speak more, speak less? And the answer is neither is good or bad, but you want to use your temperament to the best of your ability. So a Ferrari belongs in its lane, and a bicycle belongs in its lane, and a train belongs in its lane. And if you put a train on the racetrack, well, it's going to fail. And if you put a Ferrari on the train track, it's going to fail. So you want to think about your temperament and your personality, which is a mixture of nature and nurture, and you want to put yourself in the right environment. But I want everybody to challenge, and I want to challenge the popular view that mental health is an internal disease that kind of is lurking in the background and is ready to come out at any moment. I want you to think of mental ill health as an external disease, which means, are you actualizing your life externally? Are you plugging into things that add value to you? Are you going to the gym? Are you eating well? Are you engaging with the right people? Are you disengaging from things that make you sicker? You live a life with purpose. You wake up in the morning and feel like you have something to contribute. Do you contribute? Would you be your best friend if you had a choice? So all those things contribute to mental ill health. It's not like, I'm yet to meet a person that is anchored in every possible way and they've got purpose and financial security and great relationships and wonderful health, and are mentally unhealthy. And I'm yet to meet somebody that doesn't have it and is mentally healthy. So we mustn't think, and I think it's a very disempowered position to think of mental health as something that is sitting in the background and can pop out at any moment. Normal sadness, that's life. Normal stress, that's life. Normal anxiety, that is part and parcel of living a meaningful, purposeful, valuable life. That's life. But mental ill health is this inability or lack of ability to plug into things that add value to you. The moment you do that, the moment you engage with healthy things, and this is not my invention. I mean, your granny probably told you to eat healthy and exercise and create movement in your life and engage with people that are good for you and live a life with purpose and meaning, and raise your kids the right way and be raised in the right way. All those things contribute to mental health.
So there are two things I want to get into before we let you go this morning. And the first one is they're discovering more and more, historians and people who are digging up new evidence of, biographical evidence mostly of famous people in history who turn out to have probably been depressed. And there are a lot of them because some of them have left behind writings of their own, so they're almost kind of self-reporting in a way. There are other people who've been quoted, reported on. I've just recently listened to a podcast about the famous Samuel Johnson, who wrote the dictionary. He was the first person to bring out an English dictionary. And a very, very clever man, very witty, very smart, very popular, fun, jocular, avuncular dude. And he admitted that he had, what did they call it then? Melancholy, right? And it turns out that he may well have been depressed, and there are probably many other people in history who, before the word was invented, were that thing. So have you read any stories about people in history who you think, well, while you're reading the story, because you're obviously trained in this, you'd be better at catching it out than any of us would. Do you ever read these things and go, I think this person may have been suffering from depression?
So it's that fine line between genius and, I don't know, the normal, or whatever the saying is.
Genius and madness. Genius and madness. They live next door.
Completely. Yeah, exactly. Because to think outside of the box, you got to live outside the box. And when you live outside the box, you don't live within kind of what normal boundaries and normal containment offer you, which is consistency and predictability and transparency. And today is not like tomorrow. And when you get internal for too long, you kind of walk that fine line between genius and madness. But I also want everybody to remember two things. Number one is, within the normal range, being sad is okay, and within the normal range, being stressed is okay, and within the normal range, being anxious is okay. The moment it stops you from living a meaningful, purposeful life, that's when you should go and seek advice or seek help to help you manage it. But also take into account that there's almost like this selective attention, seeing all these geniuses that have been depressed, and you go, well, depression is maybe a conduit to genius, or depression is a conduit to creating something really special. Also remember there are many depressed people that don't create something magical. There are many depressed people that are not geniuses that think outside of the box. So depression is not the magic pill that that we take in order to help us reach certain levels that non-depressed people can't. Depression is not the answer to anything. You got to just manage your life appropriately so you don't step out of the comfort zone too much that you actually lose touch with normal working uh, physics or normal reality. Yeah, manage your life appropriately so you don't actually go mad.
All right, so the second part of that, and you've kind of tidily brought it all together for me, is you mentioned the word genius twice in your comments now. If there is an unequal distribution of men and women, if you average out where most of the men on the bell curve of, particular mental issues, whether it's the good ones or the bad ones, what you were telling us earlier is that there are likelier to be more men at the extremes and fewer women. Does that mean that if you're a woman, you have less chance of being a genius? Or am I extrapolating too far here?
So again, I think the extremity is not the question. It's the direction of the energy. So men and women express, let's call the same level of energy. But like, for example, in IQ tests, women do much better with the language areas, while men do much better with the numerical areas. And that's just kind of the extremities and what we find through research. Women do much better in the social sciences, in the caring industries. Men do much better, much more overly represented in the numbers industries. So that's what happens in our society. But it's the direction of the extremities. So women and men can act with the same ferocity, with the same intention, with the same intent, with the same energy, but the direction. So men tend to aim it towards things that are external, and women tend to aim it towards things that are internal.
I was really hoping you'd just say something so easy to understand that all of us could just take and use to irritate each other today. I wish you had just said, for example, they're more women are more balanced than normal, but if you want to be a genius or you want to be completely crazy, it's likely to happen if you're a man. I wish you just said that, but your answer is obviously correct, so I can't argue with you.
Gareth, one of the lens in which I'll walk into the show with is don't say anything that could get you disbarred. Just stay within your lane.
Hey, I don't think anyone has been able to trip you up so far, which must mean you're a genius, and the only reason you're a genius is because you're a guy.
Obvious.
Okay. All right, Dr. Hanan, as I said, we're going to be changing the show up over the next couple of weeks, so we're going to be experimenting with a lot of different things, and I've told anybody with ideas to email us, anybody who watches and listens to the show, and maybe they've got some ideas for what we should do. That people love you. They love having you on the show, so let's figure out a way to make that happen. And thanks again for your time this morning.
Great. I look forward to that, and have a good day.
Thanks, Doc. All right, there's Dr. Hanan getting our heads right this morning. I really hoped he'd just say something outrageous and controversial, and then I could say, well, the doctor said it, but he's too sensible. That's the problem. Gareth, I'm so proud of you, says Carl DeSantis. I know, Carl, I've been practicing. Carl said, you finally used the word fewer rather than less appropriately. Well done, my boy. We're never too old to learn, Carl. I'm so proud of myself too. I used it in the right place, and I know that you will point out the next time I use it in the wrong place. Melancholy, according to Wade, is when you put broccoli in a melon. Yes, Wade. As I said earlier, South Africa has very low levels of literacy and numeracy, and Wade is pointing that out for us. There are exceptions. Some women can become engineers and doctors. Tineke, no one was saying women cannot be doctors or engineers. Hanan wasn't saying that. I wasn't saying that. You seem to be the one who's saying that. James is useless. That's nice of you, Andre. Fire James says, Goon, there's lots of people here who just hate James. So we will probably have to dress him in a sundress and spank him around the room at some point. I'm not in a hurry to do that. If you don't mind, I've got better things to do with my time. So, Bitcoin But says I would be disbarred yesterday if I were a psychologist. Yeah, you Bitcoin But, you have zero hope of becoming a psychologist, and anyone who went to see you for their mental health problems would end up in massive shit. All right, so we were talking earlier about podcasting in South Africa and the fact that the government want to regulate it. Pop up that graphic that I sent you about News 20. News 24 are so excited about this because, of course, they are losing subscribers hand over fist. They are not able to compete when they put out. And listen, I will give credit where it's due when it comes to investigative reporting and proper journalism. News 24 probably have the edge over most podcasters. There are podcasters who are much better at it than them. There are also occasions where News 24 turns out to be more reliable than the podcasters, though those are becoming rarer and rarer. I would say that this is just them telling everybody how, this is great news for us and it's bad news for podcasting, and they seem just a little too self-satisfied for my liking. Nonetheless, it is actually going on at the moment. There are a couple of public hearings taking place. The public has been encouraged to make submissions to help the government understand podcasting a little better. Most of them don't know what it is. Even though they've been interviewed for 15 years on podcasts, they're still like, we're not really sure what this podcasting thing is. So it's apparently Kusela Diko, who's one of our ministers, who's checking this out. Also the Minister of Communications, who's a DA minister. So it's all the parties. You can't just blame one of the parties. Let's find out from someone who actually knows what's going on here. Jonathan Warncke is the founder of Ping, which is a podcast-led content strategy, production, and marketing company. Now, he helps brands turn podcasts into the core of their content ecosystem. So that's a very good business, is allying brands and podcasts. We know podcasting is the fastest growing medium in the world. We also know that in America, as of 2023, I think it was, there are projected $2.5 billion in spending, and I'm absolutely sure that that's gone up since 2023. So this guy is perfectly placed to be able to explain to us precisely what is happening in terms of government and this intention they have on regulating podcasting in some way. So, Jonathan, first of all, welcome. It's nice to see you, and thank you for being able to join us this morning.
Hi, Gareth. Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to actually speak to you in person. I've a long-time fan and listener.
Thanks, dude. And I love the shirt, and I love the beard, and I love the glasses. We need people who look interesting in the world of podcasting, not people who all look the same.
Well, normally traditionally we work in sound, so I thought I'd have to be loud on the visual side.
Yeah. I'm actually launching something in the next 2 weeks, which is going back to audio only. Okay. We're still going to do this show, so don't panic anybody. The minute I say there's going to be a change, people shit themselves. But this show will continue, but I'm thinking of going back to doing something, a daily thing actually, which will be audio only. I still believe in the power of audio. I'm sure you do too. We could wax lyrical about this for hours, right? Let's talk about this regulation thing, because I always get a little bit nervous when I hear that government want to regulate, they want to get involved in controlling, in making laws around, in restricting. And obviously there's a component of this that no doubt there are a lot of government people who think where there isn't regulation, there's huge danger. We know podcasting has been flourishing without regulation. Do they need to get involved?
Well, I mean, that's what the whole roundtable was about. And I was there representing the South African Podcasters Guild more than myself as, producing podcasts for Ping. So we represent about 500 plus podcasters, mostly independent. And our position is that there are already laws in place for slander and libel, and a lot of the any illegalities in speech that go against the Constitution or our law. They're already you can sue people, right?
Yeah.
But what's kind of missing is a complaints channel like the BCCSA, where people who don't have the resources to go and sue someone, which is a long and expensive process. There's just not as many ways to get to a resolution there. So there's the platforms, they have complaints mechanisms, they have their own platform standards, and you can contact podcasters directly, but there's no kind of like middle person ombud who can make a judgment. And those platforms have their own rules based largely on American law, not South African law.
All right, but if they're going to regulate, in inverted commas, podcasting, then where do you draw the line? Because it's kind of a gray area. You would have to go after YouTube, social media channels, Spotify, Apple. I don't think the government have deep enough pockets to go after those guys. And I also don't think that they're going to get anywhere. I don't think there's going to be any satisfaction for anyone, someone who feels aggrieved by a podcast that went wrong, someone who's trying to regulate and control and manipulate the medium. They're opening up a can of worms here. There's going to be, it's going to be a Pandora's box, to use another horrible metaphor here, of really dangerous stuff. And I don't think they have the means to do it. They can't execute on any of this. If you go after a YouTube or a Facebook or an Instagram or an X or a TikTok, that's going to become a very complicated and costly business for government.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two things on that are, number one, podcasts aren't just audio, as they now increasingly become much more YouTube and video based. They also are completely multi-channel. They all have supporting social media channels, so they're communicating their message on Instagram and X and TikTok and all that as well. So how do you separate podcasts from every other digital media? I don't think you can. And I think that the solution for any kind of responsible growth of the industry would have to include probably all digital media. I think podcasts are just easy to kind of go for because they're longer form, and there have been some very high level kind of cases in the last couple of years where people have said stupid things, and that's drawn that focus, which I'm actually glad about, because at least we're talking about it. And I think that in the roundtable, we took a good first step in terms of educating Parliament more about what podcasts are. They might have been on them, but they don't fully understand them, of course. So we were there to kind of share with the members what we're doing, what the various parts of the industry are trying to do, so they can understand it a bit better. But Chairperson Kusela Diko, in her opening statements to that roundtable, I don't think many people listened to them, but she made a couple of points. She started with, this is not about podcast regulation, and fair enough, we're in a political landscape here, and I'm not an expert on that. So, but I'm taking it at face value. Everything she said made sense. She said, we're not looking to regulate and to stifle freedom of speech here, although here's my opinion, there are definitely some elements within the government and political parties that do want to do that, of course.
Sure.
But they're not there to stifle. They want to empower and it to grow responsibly, which is what's happened with radio, the Press Council, and other media as well. And I agree that as podcasting grows so quickly, we're going to get to a point where these edge cases of problems suddenly become a bigger problem because the industry is just much bigger. So we want to prepare for that now and have the kind of structures in place so that people have recourse. And as you say, government is, I don't think they're capable of regulating it. I don't think we want them to regulate it. So the answer, I think, will lie in a self-regulatory system, which is what Madam Diko said anyway. She said that although they're not starting off with any kind of like precepts of what the solution are, in her mind, it's probably going to look like self-regulation similar to the Press Council or the BCCSA.
All right, so maybe it's a storm in a teacup. How do you feel that all the submissions went? Did any of them bring extra clarity? Did you feel that there was any friction or aggression between people who wanted to see more regulation and people who didn't? How did it all unfold? Because I'm sure you didn't just make your submission and then leave.
Yeah, there were a couple of panels, and to go kind of through them, on the members of Parliament side, there were some kind of different opinions. I think there were two guys. Are the guys who wear camo, they're the MK party, or
yeah,
right?
MK.
So there were two guys from them. I can't remember their names, unfortunately. I'm sure they're very nice. One of them was for regulation, saying, you don't, your show doesn't exist in a vacuum. And the other one is a podcaster, and he said, we don't want regulation. So maybe there's not like a clear party line there. But everyone was concerned, and of course, everyone reaches for the top shelf and goes, "Oh, danger to children and child sexual exploitation," and like far and away, that is not the problem that you're going to deal with podcasts. You're going to deal with slander, libel, racism, that kind of thing, right? But everyone goes for those kind of top shelf, outrageous situations. But so they expressed their concerns. We had, but Dr. Sizwe Mpofu Welsh, who's a brilliant podcast and a brilliant speaker, he kind of led the beginning of the first panel with a very, very calm, very measured, like brilliantly expressed call for not regulation, but responsibility and growth and support. And what the industry really needs is support. And I was sitting behind him, and you'll occasionally see screenshots, and then there's just this colorful clown behind Sizwe. And I think that he's just like, I really admire the way he speaks. And then our panel, which was about growth and measurement, we had Meta was there and Google was there, and unfortunately YouTube, and unfortunately Spotify wasn't. But they talked about, basically they don't see podcasters as this different media to anything else. You know, it's all just content for them, and that they have their own platform rules and regulations and all that. And then I spoke in that panel, and I thought that they made sense, but at the same time, I do agree with the view that the platforms are largely extractive, in that they overseas, we pay them a lot of money, they make a lot of ad money out of us, and I would love to see some kind of support come from them for growing the industry, which serves them as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you're also starting to see, and we mentioned, I spoke about this a little earlier on in the show, the rise of brain rot and AI slop, and the fact that this stuff is not making any content platform any better. I also think that the podcast format of one person talking to another person over a desk may be nearing its saturation point, to put it mildly. And I wonder what the next evolution is going to be. I'm working on some of these things myself, but what are your thoughts?
I think that there's still plenty of space in the industry and B2B areas. Like every kind of sector of business in this industry still has a space for a leader in that industry to kind of like own the future and thought leadership there. In the B2C space, it's so competitive. Obviously, everyone quotes Diary of a CEO or Joe Rogan or whatever it might be. And there's limited listening hours for everyone. Everyone can listen to maybe 2 or 3 podcasts maximum a day.
Sure.
And I do think, I mean, dialogue interview shows are great, but I do kind of agree. I think we're heading towards the era of creator TV, where we now have the tools to create television level shows with very small teams on very tight budgets, and we can go into niche topics, documentaries, comedy. We can create so many things, and that podcasts as a long form will turn into something that's kind of much more polished as we have the tools to do that.
I saw another story, and I don't know if you saw this as well, about how they want to go after tax money. They want to be able to tax podcast. They think podcasters are these rich people, who have like 7 holiday homes and a private jet. I'm wondering if they're even going to discover this after their first investigation of MacG or me or you or any of the other people who are doing this and have been doing it for many years, and whether they think we're secretly running trusts that run out of Mauritius, and we've got sugarcane plantations that we're running as side businesses. What do you make of that? Do they believe that there's there's hidden money and massive money to be made here?
I don't know. I live in a small house in Melkbos-Strand, and I have yet to see the millions roll in from podcasting. But
lies.
Yeah, lies. It's all hidden. It's all there's gold bars under the table. No, and a Sunday Times reporter sent me some questions exactly on that topic, because I wasn't aware that someone had made those comments. But it's ridiculous. The podcasting industry has an incredibly short head and long tail, and if you look at a MacG, then yes, I'm sure he's making a lot of money, but 99.9% of podcasters make no money or very little, maybe enough to support production. That's part of what we want to kind of change. But Yeah, it's there. My answer was there's already laws in place for taxation as well. Anyone who's making money from podcasting is paying their taxes unless they're avoiding them. And so we don't need to talk about extra taxes on what's essential. It's like taxing people who have a Twitter account. That's insane. Like no one makes enough money from that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a big part of the education job we need to do with them, is that like no one's getting rich on this right now.
Carl DeSantis says in the comments, Caesar Mpofu Walsh is my second favorite podcast after this show. He's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, he's terrific. The tax leeches, they neither smoke nor grow tobacco. Well, you know, the other reality is, and I think that people are starting to wise up to this too, there are probably too many podcasts. I declared a moratorium on this show ages ago. I said, no more podcasts. We don't have time. We don't have space. There are now more people podcasting than there are people listening and watching the podcasts. So it's time to scale back on that. I think maybe we've also reached a point where people are able to separate the wheat from the chaff. Obviously, we want all the talented people who have something to say and who are brilliant to bring it on, right? We don't want to restrict any of that. We'd love to have the very best in the world competing with the very best in the world. Where do you think South Africa has an edge?
I think that as per the usual kind of way South Africa works, we have an incredible kind of culture and go-getter attitude and grit and determination that expresses itself in our sports, in our art, in many different ways. And I think that, like with many industries, we can show.
I think someone's stealing your car, Jonathan.
That's our alarm going.
Okay.
Turned off.
I don't want someone to steal your car while you're talking to me, and you're sitting here going, can I talk to you in a second? I'd rather have my car.
They're taking my G-Wagon funded by podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. One of your G-Wagons.
Yeah. Where was I? Sorry.
You were talking about the nature of South African podcasts, where where we have an edge.
Yeah. So where we have an edge for South African podcasters is make a show about whatever topic it is, but within South Africa. So if it's financial services in South Africa, science in South Africa, because there's all these international shows that don't have that specific context. We're a very different market with very different rules and different context. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And I don't think that we have nearly enough vernacular language shows. I don't think we have enough local sports shows. I think there's huge opportunity still to unlock millions of listeners, a huge industry. But if it comes to another white boy with a podcast, that kind of thing, then yeah, we might be reaching saturation point. Or there's no saturation point. There's just a highly competitive, may the strongest survive evolutionary pool. That's.
Yeah, I also think that you may point to the fact that podcasting tends to be, and I know you were being sarcastic and pejorative here for effect, but most audiences in podcasts are still heavily slanted towards male. I think there are examples of very, very successful female-led and female audience-led podcasts, but it's always the guys that lead the way. I mean, let's not fuck around.
Don't put me. You almost did it to the doctor before me. Don't get me in trouble.
Okay, so let's talk about this quickly. There are countless examples of where government has got involved in an industry and they've ruined it. They've made it worse. Mining, the tobacco advertising legislation, the rules around smoking, the rules around sponsorship of live events. Many sports examples can be brought to book here as well. And I see people making comments this morning about how everything that they touch ruins that industry. Are you worried that could happen with regard to not just podcasting, but digital media in general? Do you think that anything that government does here is bound to have a negative result? Or do you actually see the slightest, tiniest possible improvement that could be made?
As I said, I haven't been in Parliament a lot. I don't know a lot of politicians. I think that Kusela.
It's one of the reasons we like having you on. If you've been in Parliament a lot, we don't want you on.
Right, fair enough. I think that is the worst case scenario. Any kind of government regulation is the worst case scenario, and I don't think anyone wants that. I don't even think the government necessarily wants that, or at least the people who actually are going to do the hard yards. There's plenty of people who will throw mud from the sidelines and say, we need to stop these people from saying whatever, they're all crazy and they're going to, like, there's an element, and that's all politicized people with their own agendas, right? But the people that I've met in government seem to be wanting kind of responsible growth, and we fully support that. I think that the chances of government regulation like this are impossible. Like, they're so far, because if you get to, and they've said that they don't want this, but if you had to register a podcast, if you had to register a YouTube channel, it's never going to work. You can't do that. You can't enforce that. We can't even enforce criminal law in South Africa, never mind this kind of thing. So I'm not worried about it being where we end up. The kind of more possible middle ground is a self-regulatory system where maybe government is providing some kind of funding to support it. But I think even that, where's that money coming from? I think that industry, and the problem with the podcasting industry and the digital media industry is that there aren't these large media companies like Media 24, Kagiso Media, who are a member of the guild, to fund that kind of thing. But we do have to find the money somewhere. But yeah, I'm not too worried about government taking control. You can't control it, and there'll be an uprising.
Well, Carl DeSantos is taking none of your shit this morning. He says, the fact that this dude is singing Kuselo Diko's praises is clear demonstration he doesn't know anything about politics. I don't see massive advantages. I also think that it's really scurrilous when members of parliament start talking about keeping kids safe with regard to podcasts. Like, podcasts are the reason that children in this country aren't safe. I mean, we have enormous and well-reported evidence that there's gender-based violence, that there's child abuse. None of this, with even the most experimental and imaginative mental gymnastics, can be proven to lead back to politics. It's like the people used to say that gaming was the main reason that there was violence in society in America. I mean, no evidence whatsoever. And the minute they start claiming they're looking after the children, I feel like saying, no. That's because you run out of other excuses for why you want to take control and exercise power. And that's very often what people are doing.
Yeah. Look, I get you. It's the same thing when you see on the American right side of politics creating laws called the Family Act and the Protection of Children Act and stuff. And it's all a thinly veiled cloak for doing some kind of horrible injustice. So I get that I'm an optimist and that I'm naive in terms of politics, but that is, as the guild is a representative of kind of independent, a lot of them hobbyist podcasters, but also large shows like Nicole Engelbrecht's True Crime SA and others. Like, our job is to work with everyone and try to make something positive out of it, and not come with kind of preconceptions of, Kusela Diko's a monster or whatever. Like, I don't know her well enough, and I'm not going to take other people's
I don't think that helps. I don't think that helps either. And I'm I know that Carl is one of those people who will fight with a politician on any given day, so don't worry about it. Don't feel bad, Jonathan. I do see Diego saying, I was in the room with John and we can only speak on what we observed, and Kusela was well-spoken and very supportive of the industry. Cool. I don't think everybody's as interested in podcasting as an industry as perhaps we are. Tell us about your show and what kind of stuff you do.
Well, I work in branded podcast production for kind of thought leadership, if you like that term, and then brand sponsored shows. So I produce a show called Winning the Away Game, which is you take an ex-Springbok and a business leader, and you put them together, and you talk about how life post Springbok life treated them, and or with the leader, we go like how they moved overseas and how that treated them. So it's a show about rugby and business and dispelling the rumor that South African expats are traitors. And then as podcasting goes, more and more video. I'm working on a new YouTube channel called Table for Two, where we go and visit great restaurants around Cape Town, and we don't review them. We just share that experience. And then I've got a bunch of kind of like other kind of branded podcast clients. It's a good growing space. It's a little bit in terms selling shovels to gold miners, I suppose, would be the the thing, because it is easier to support others building their stuff than it is to suddenly become this viral sensation. It's a hard thing to do. And personally, I'm not very good at running the 5-year podcast. I have like a shorter attention span than that. I've never taken a series past, I think, 22 episodes, and I've done about 5 personal shows. And then I just get like, okay, what's the next thing?
Well, I think there's this interesting, and maybe there's someone in the comments section today who wants to give us their opinion on this too. There's this amazing dichotomy, right? You've got people who really love getting into maybe it's a true crime podcast or something where there's a story and it unfolds over 7 episodes, and those episodes can each be an hour or more long. And then there are people who want, like reels. They want what TikTok delivers. These very short, sharp, sometimes extremely clever, funny, interesting, or very, very stupid things. And it has to do with attention span, but it also has to do with what the content is trying to communicate. And I don't have any problem with people who want the shorter form. In fact, I'm probably one of those people too. But there are occasions where I even break that rule for myself. What kind of stuff do you see being produced mostly within the guild that you represent, but in South Africa generally, and in podcasting internationally? Like, what are the edge cases and the trends that you're most excited by?
I think obviously the diversity, the multi-platformness of podcasting is the what's happening right now. Everyone's moving to YouTube. Everyone's using video for discovery and then audio as the long form thing. Within South Africa, we're slightly behind America. It's nice to see. It's nice to have something you can look at and go, okay, they're ahead of us, so we can kind of see what the trends are, but let's try and do it better than them. So where we are right now is that we're kind of, most of our members are still living in the 30 to 45 minutes length episode. Internationally, I think we're down to about 20-25 minutes is more like an average show length, and there's much more diversification. Like, you'll find the 7-minute show, the 3-hour Joe Rogan show. It's all about, what serves the topic and what serves the audience, what they're willing to listen to, what they're keen to listen to. And there's so much variety within formats that is yet to be explored as well. As I said, as you said as well, I think that the dialogue show, the interview show, could do with a lot of revving up. There's, segments and bits, and like radio, they're constantly bringing in new people to talk to, a little bit more effort in terms of creativity in the show, rather than, cool, we're here, let's talk for 45 minutes. So I think as competition ramps up, as more podcasts come online, we're gonna see more creativity in how to keep people's attention and how to boil that content down, so it's not just lazy, turn the mic on and then talk forever and then turn it off again.
Yeah, and I suppose also there needs to be a bit of polish. People need to know what they're doing. They need to have a point of view, but more importantly, they also actually need to add value to the audience and make sure that they're improving their lives in some way, giving them information that helps them, making sense of complicated situations, being able to explain stuff that is going on where some people are absolutely agenda-driven and are basically propagandists. If you can do the work of researching complex things and explaining it to an audience so that they can sound like the smart people at work or at a family dinner or whatever, you're probably doing them a greater service, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think the question we all have to ask ourselves is, what are you giving your listeners that ChatGPT can't? Like, information is more or less free and has zero value from now on. So you either have to present it with some kind of, as you say, point of view, or some kind of hot take that ChatGPT can't give them, or entertain them, or you have to figure out a new way.
But a personality might help. I mean, a lot of these podcasters, especially the ones who do very serious interviews, and they're trying to make you more efficient and speed up your to max out your potential or whatever. I find a lot of these people are just like the charlatan motivational speakers that we used to have in the 90s and 2000s. These guys who would go up on stage and say, yes, 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 but they've got zero going on in their own lives and nothing to say and very little personality when the cameras are off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I'd like to think about it in terms of, if you want to have a more interesting show, then you should try to be more interesting. And I do that by outsourcing to my clothing. I'm a very boring person, but I have loud clothing. But for other people, that's my strategy. For other people, though, do interesting stuff. Like, photographers say, if you want to take great shots, put yourself in front of great places.
Yeah, that's not bad advice. Carl says there's an episode of DOAC, Diary of a CEO, where Stephen interviews a doctor who speaks about the dangers of shorts and how they're basically will induce ADHD. Scary stuff. Stay away from shorts. I don't think he's talking about the clothing item, just by the way, because people may be confused. You just mentioned clothing, Jonathan.
Some
I
shorts
think he's
can
talking
give
about
me
the
ADHD.
shorts. Yeah, the shorts online. And that is something scary. I wonder how much of this stuff is affecting people's ability to pay attention and focus when they really have to, whether it's at work or at school or at varsity, or if you're trying to read a book or pay attention to a project for a specific amount of time. And most people really struggle with that now, and I can't help thinking that social media is partly responsible for that inability to pay attention.
Massively. And I mean, two things out of that. I think that podcasts are in many cases an antidote to that, in that, stay on topic, have a conversation, see if you can pay attention for 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, as long as it's not 30 seconds. I think that's healthy to have that attention span. And it brings you to Netflix's theory of repeat the plot of the movie every, I don't know, 3 times every episode or something, because everyone's on their phone watching TV. And I've do that sometimes as well. And it's terrifying, actually. I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah, and we're making people dumber. We're absolutely not helping them to be smart and to pay attention to the things that matter in the world and derive real joy and happiness out of being in the moment, being present, not thinking about what's next or checking this feed or going on there to read a message and doing 1,000 things at once. It's almost as if by having more, we end up with less.
Well, exactly. And that's the age we're going into with AI slop, is just the tsunami of content is going to come. And the reaction will be a move away from it or tools to silence them, or something's going to come out of it in response.
Congo Chris says, this show has its own niche of deranged viewers yelling into the void, directed vaguely by the host. Yeah, that's a very good description of the Gareth Cliff show as it stands.
That's all of us.
Yeah. There's also an interesting point here being made by Wade. Authenticity is finding a revival. That is why the Vin Diesels of the world are falling in fame. I don't know how you feel about this, Jonathan, and really it wasn't my intention to pick your brain on more diverse things than the podcasting hearings, but I wonder how you feel about the fact that this constant drive to authenticity is almost making people behave in an inauthentic way. In other words, because they want to appear to be authentic, people are learning how to pretend authenticity. And this is not only a problem in the world of podcasting and in content creation generally. I think it's also it's happening in the real world as well. You're seeing people following a trend and wanting to appear as if they are interested in a certain thing, that they're good at a certain thing, that they're capable of a certain thing, when actually the real version of them has no interest in that at all. They're chasing clicks, they're driving up sensational numbers because they want people to, they want the algorithm to serve them an audience. And I think it's having probably a perverse effect on their popularity in the long run. Not just popularity, but their effectiveness in the long run. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is very much a LinkedIn problem, performative authenticity, and those trends that you see, those trends you see on social media where people are crying into their cameras and, attempting to be authentic, but you turned on a camera and then started crying. Like, it's insane. So yeah, it's another way to get attention. And as soon as that is identified, content creators start using that, So I do think that there will be a move back towards in-person events, live communities, people getting together in human mode. So I think that will be a reaction to all of the online stuff. But yeah, it's you can spot it, eh? We're just very, very good at seeing inauthenticity, even when it is authenticity cloaked.
All right, well, listen, Jonathan, it's very nice to meet you and to have you on the show. And I'm glad that you're out there fighting for podcasts because if they'd asked me to come to Parliament, which I've done before. I went to argue for low data prices many years ago. It didn't get anywhere. I don't think I had
You're
any
still
discernible
talking about
effect.
it in that roundtable.
Yeah, well, long may that debate continue and hopefully be solved at some point, because South Africans, the more info you have, the more access you have to that info, the better. What we have to individually become good at, I suppose, is being able to discern truth from fact, good from bad, and be able to curate our own lives around what we want to achieve in a day. And I think that that's where podcasting can be tremendous. If you line it up, if you've got the right inputs, you can have the right outputs. And there's so much to choose from. More is always better than less in the world of content. Would you agree with that?
Well, we have talked about the tsunami of AI slop. So taking that aside, I think more choice is good. It's people just have limited time and resources to choose, to identify the better, to identify what more they actually need. And, that's where, there are, like, for example, we have the South African pod charts, which just shows you South African podcasts online. It's podcast.co.za. And you can go and look at South African shows. So if you want to see something local, if you want to see something that is, hopefully it's good. The guild members tend to make good stuff. You can go check it out there. But yeah, identifying the good from the bad and then putting it into your system, because as you say, what goes in is what comes out, right? So curating that feed, and I hate that word, that's important.
All right. It looks pretty good here. I see lots of podcasts that I've never heard of in my life, and I'm probably going to want to check out one or two. Just one or two. Let's not get too excited about...
I think you're in there somewhere. You guys won an award at the Podcast Awards a couple of years ago.
Oh, really? Did we? I didn't know that. Did we? Okay. Well, that's nice. All right. So
you're
listen,
a very big, very rich celebrity star, so you wouldn't know about that.
No, obviously not. I have no idea. What is exciting is that I think there will be new and innovative developments just around the corner. There always are. I'm always keen to find out what's at that leading edge, even if it's still rough and hasn't necessarily found a way to look polished and perfect yet. I'm always excited to see which people are breaking down the walls, making new stuff happen. So you'll keep us informed if you see anything that I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be an exciting time. It's exciting times. It's crazy, scary, tumultuous times, but it's people will make good stuff out of it.
All right, listen, Jonathan, thank you, and I appreciate your time enormously. Keep doing the good work, and enjoy Melkbosstrand.
I'm going to. Thank you so much for having me, Gareth. It was an awesome conversation.
All right, dude. Thank you. Okay, so on the subject of podcasting, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be launching something new, which I feel like it's very necessary, and based not only on months of planning this anyway, and conversations like the one we just had with Jonathan. I think people are looking for a daily podcast in audio that they can listen to on the way into work, that'll prepare them for the day, that'll get them all the important information they need. A little bit of opinion, a little bit of humor is not going to go amiss, but essentially a summary of what's happening in the international world and in the local world, without any clickbait, without any drive to be seen as entertainment, the kind of stuff that is valuable. That word keeps coming up. Useful, valuable, practical, stuff that makes people's lives better. And I know we've got a ton of people who have been very annoyed with me for having stopped doing the daily show. With this podcast, we're going to keep doing this show, and we're going to keep doing great things with it. But this is an entertainment show. The thing that I'm proposing is more like an executive daily briefing. And I'm going to charge money for it, so don't expect it to be for free. Maybe the first week we'll do for free, so you can get an idea of what we're going to be doing. It'll be audio only. There may occasionally be experts and guests on, but mostly it'll be me telling you what's happening in the world, in places like Iran and the Ukraine, sure, but also in places like Germany, where they've just had some important provincial elections. In places like the Western Cape we spoke about this morning, with these troops being deployed into the Cape Flats because they've had an enormous surge in violence. We'll be talking about things like the price of oil, because that does matter and it affects us at the petrol pump. We'll be talking about the things that are happening in not just politics and economics, but in culture. The stories that are happening in places America doesn't want to talk about, maybe ideological battles that are taking place in states in the US, where we need to pay attention because either we are upstream or downstream from that. And that's going to be something new we'll be launching in just a few days' time. I'm going to call it the Gareth Cliff Daily Briefing. It's got me in it, so you know what you're getting. Daily Briefing being a far more condensed version of all of that info. It'll be power-packed, punchy, relevant, important, and most importantly, useful. So check it out. I'll be giving you updates on my social media. I saw Bitcoin Butt mentioned here. Is that why I went off of X, talking about the slop and the AI stuff, which is also a big concern. I'm not going to be doing any of that. But no, I'm back on X. I have been for a little while, just quietly kind of having a say here or there, tweeting about things that were important to me and replying to other people's tweets. I had a conversation with Penwell in the tweets yesterday, if you can still call them tweets, right? X's. Now, if you're talking about your X's, that's a very different thing. I can't use that. So I'll be giving you the info on that going forward. And I'm thinking of it costing something like a cup of coffee once a month. So we're talking like $45 a month to get 5 episodes a week. We will release it probably at 7 in the morning. So it'll go live. I may pre-record some of it, but it'll be audio. And I hope it's going to be a game changer because I'm absolutely up to here with like entertainment-based podcasts. So if there's something you want to add to that, if you've got any ideas for it, I'd love to hear what you think. Let us know. I'm super excited about this. I think that it'll be an opportunity to make smarter, better, more concise use of your time and of the audio medium, which I've always believed deserved its own place in the sun. So let's get into it. I hope you'll be joining me on that journey. I will keep you informed right here and on social media and with all of our other channels. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you pay attention. We will catch up with you next week here on the Gareth Cliff Show. Oh, fuck, that's right, James. It's a public holiday next week. You don't get the show on a public holiday. Sorry. But do have a Good Friday, because that's what it is, and enjoy today too, which is also Good Friday, even though it's not a public holiday. And we'll be back the week after that. Long weekend coming up next weekend. Ciao, everybody. Bye.